time we've got a Ford 01 E250 with a 4.2 engine. Now the complaint on this is it runs bad. It starts and runs, it does run a little rough. It's never been a complaint of a no start. But as we accelerate it, you hear the misfire. Clearly got a misfire. Now the first thing we like to do on a misfire is determine what type of misfire we're looking at, the type of an overall problem.
So how do we do that? Well, misfires can have several causes, so we need to narrow it down, and as quickly as possible. There are three types of engine misfires: mechanical misfires, ignition misfires, and air-fuel mixture misfires. Diagnosing each of these can be very time-consuming, and we all know that time is money, right? So the first thing we need to do is narrow it down. The type that requires the most work to repair and is the most expensive is the mechanical misfire. And that's where some physical or mechanical thing is disrupting the normal flow of mechanical movement and causing the misfire. Now it's important to keep this in mind. If the cause is mechanical, then there is no need at this point to waste time on the other two types, the other types of misfires. Mechanical is the most serious, it's the most time-consuming, and most expensive. So let's start there. Let's eliminate the most serious first. And the easiest way to do that is with a vacuum test. Well, why is that? Well, in an internal combustion engine, combustion occurs when you have fuel, oxygen, and heat. If you remove the fuel, you will also remove the heat. And that leaves you with just oxygen. No combustion, no power. Now this is a cutaway of a good running engine. And as you know, when combustion occurs, it produces power, and that's what we want. Now notice all the mechanical moving parts. The pistons are moving up and down, and the valves are opening and closing. Air is being drawn in by vacuum. Fuel is added, and we have combustion. Compression is created, and we have power. The color in this animation represents combustion. Now this is the same illustration, but there's no color. The absence of color in this animation represents the absence of combustion. When you remove the fuel, it also removes the heat, and we are left with all the same mechanical parts moving the same way they did before. When we remove the fuel and the heat, there's no combustion and there's no power, but the mechanical movement is still drawing air in with vacuum. That vacuum can tell us then if the engine is in good mechanical condition. With fuel or without fuel, the mechanical movement will be the same. If the mechanical movement is good, it cannot be the cause of the misfire. So a vacuum test will rule in or out a mechanical cause of the misfire. So a vacuum test is what we need to do first. So let's do that.
The easiest thing to do is try and eliminate any kind of mechanical problem first. We do that with a vacuum test. So let's go around to the front. Now we've got our vacuum gauge hooked into the brake booster, and you can see by the gauge we got about 22, 23 pounds of pressure. But the important thing is that needle is steady. It's not bouncing. That means the mechanical side of this engine is good. If this was bouncing, we could have probably a piston problem, a valve problem, any kind of a mechanical problem. With this vacuum gauge being steady, at this point I'm not going to pursue any kind of a mechanical problem until I've ruled out everything else. So the first step is determine whether or not you've got a mechanical or some other kind of a problem. Steady vacuum means at this point we're not going to pursue mechanical.
So our vacuum test ruled out a mechanical problem as the cause of the misfire. Now I know some of you are saying most newer vehicles don't have good access to vacuum ports, and you're correct. It seems like the newer the vehicle, the fewer the vacuum ports. However, this concept stays the same. Only the way we test it changes. Let's use our critical thinking here. In a good four-stroke mechanical engine, the valves and pistons are always moving. They create negative pressure on the downstroke or the intake stroke, and they create compression on the upstroke or the compression stroke. If we can verify a good mechanical engine with a vacuum test, can't we verify a good mechanical engine with a compression test as well? Of course, you know the answer to this is yes. So, if our goal here is to quickly verify a good mechanical engine by using vacuum, can't we do the same thing by using compression? Again, the answer is yes. But how do we do that? We do it with a relative compression test. A true compression test is not quick, but a relative compression test is very quick. That test is a topic all by itself and deserves its own video, so I will feature that in part 2 of this video. So right now, let's continue with the vehicle that we're working on. Now, since we have ruled out a mechanical reason for the misfire, we now need to investigate the other 2 possibilities, ignition and air-fuel mixture possibilities. But before we do that, let's check and see if there are any codes and if that will give us any clues. Well, here's what we found.
Okay, here's our codes. 171, system lean on bank 1. 74, system lean on bank 2. 304, 5, and 6. We've got a 4, 5, and 6 misfire, so one bank is misfiring. So where do we go from here?
Now use your critical thinking here. You'll notice that this is a V-style engine, and that means there are 2 banks. However, only one bank has a misfire, the bank for cylinders 4, 5, and 6. But both banks are lean. Now, does that make sense? What does it indicate? And how does it relate to the complaint? Well, let's look a little bit further.
Well, what we did, a common problem when you have banks 1 and 2, because something is affecting both sides of that engine. Yeah, we got a misfire on one side. And what this tells me is I've got 2 problems here.
2 problems. Very possible. So again, critical thinking tells me that I need to see if that's true. So let's try and eliminate one of those problems.
We looked at the mass airflow sensor, and the mass airflow sensor was very dirty, so we cleaned it, ran the engine again, and we got rid of codes 171 and 174, but we still had our misfire. Remember, the mass airflow is going to affect both sides of the engine equally, therefore we had lean bank 1, lean bank 2. Okay, after we cleaned the mass airflow sensor, we went back, cleared the codes, ran the engine again. You can see that we got rid of our bank 1 and 2 problem, and now we only have a 306, cylinder number 6 misfire.
What happened to the misfires on cylinder 4 and 5? Well, the simple explanation is this. After we cleaned the mass airflow, we cleared the codes. This basically resets the computer's history. Then we ran the engine, and the computer began checking for problems again. It found and recorded misfires for cylinder number 6. Evidently, there were either none in cylinder 4 or 5, or they were there, but they were significantly fewer than the computer's requirement to set a code for them. So how do we verify this? Well, codes are warnings, not data, and we need data. For direct misfire data, how many misfire counts there were, we need to go to mode 6. Mode 6 is self-monitoring that the car's computer does to detect misfires. After the number of misfires exceeded a predetermined threshold, the check engine light will be turned on. Mode 6 gives us a look at the misfires in a cylinder before the light comes on. Usually only manufacturer-specific scan tools will display misfire data when there is no code. However, using OBD2 generic scan tools, we can access Mode 6, especially is helpful on Ford vehicles.
Now I'm using a Veris. I've used a Modus before. You may have a completely different scan tool. They maybe operate a little bit differently, but this is a Ford, so you're not going to find direct misfire data under the OEM side. You're going to have to go out of here. You're going to have to go down to generic side, go down to Mode 6. Now in Mode 6, we'll go to Test ID 53 for the misfire data.
Mode 6 test IDs are a topic all in themselves, and they will be covered on a separate video.
And you can see here now we've got cylinders 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This value is 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and all of a sudden we got 10,722 on cylinder number 6. So this is confirming that cylinder 6 is our misfire problem.
Hey, we're making progress, but we're not done yet. We still need to narrow it down some more.
Fortunately, for our sake in trying to make a video for you, then this being cylinder number 6, it's easy to get to. We can get our camera and light down here. If it weren't 6, you could do the same thing, but you may have to just reach in further. Remember, this is a snub-nosed van, so we've got the doghouse off. Now we've taken the spark plug wire off. We've got a inline spark tester on. Going to start the engine. See, we got our spark tester on. We got the spark at number 6.
So we've eliminated mechanical, and we just now eliminated ignition, so that leaves us with air fuel.
We're going to put our spark plug wire back on. We know we got spark. We know we got compression. It starts and runs. We know we got good steady vacuum. So next we're going to do is check the injector. Over here again, we're kind of lucky. This injector number 6 is easy to get to. Hook up a Noid light.
Unplug the injector. First, do a continuity test on the injector to verify that it is not open. Then test for power and a ground command from the computer.
Start the engine. Okay, now you can see we've got computer command to that injector. The computer is telling the injector to fire, but is it firing? Is the injector any good? What do you think about an ohm test? Let's do an ohm test. Okay, we're on injector number 5 right now, and you can see on the ohm test we got 11.7. Okay, we're on injector number 6 right now. Go to the ohm meter, 11.4. So these ohms are about the same. You might assume here that it's good. Well, again, the ohm test is pretty unreliable. We're showing you this because it can be deceiving. We're not testing that injector under load. We need to check it when it is actually doing something. We know that the computer is commanding that injector on. The ohm test at this point we're going to ignore, and we're actually going to power that injector. Now,
we used this picture earlier to test that the injector had power and was being commanded on. Now we simply switch to the injector itself and apply power and ground directly to that injector instead of letting the computer do it.
now we're using a power probe. When we take the harness off the injector, we just simply run the power probe across the injector, the negative and the positive, and we're going to command that injector on. We've got our fuel pressure gauge hooked up. When we turn the key on, then we're going to watch fuel pressure and see if it drops. Okay, the green light on our power probe tells us that we're connected okay. We're on both sides of the circuit. We're going to turn the key on. Fuel pressure goes up. Now we're going to hit the power probe to red. And you notice the pressure did not drop.
Now you may be saying that you notice the pressure is going down. Well, what you're seeing is not pressure dropping. It is simply bleeding down somewhere in the fuel line or at our connector. In a moment you will see what a real pressure drop looks like.
But now we're going to go to a good injector and show you the difference. Now we're on number 5, a good injector. We've got the key on, so our fuel pressure's up. Now we're going to hit the power probe, power that injector on, and you see fuel pressure drop dramatically. Let's go back to number 6. Okay, now we're back on number 6. Turn the key on, we get fuel pressure pumped up. Take the power probe and power that injector, and you don't see any drop in fuel pressure. That means that injector is not squirting fuel. Okay, so what do we know? The vacuum test tells us that the mechanical side of the engine is good. The spark tester tells us that the spark is good. The Noid light tells us that the computer is commanding that injector on. The fuel pressure test, drop test, tells us that that injector is not squirting. So we're going to put a new injector in it, reconfirm everything. Okay, we got the new fuel injector in. We'll start it up. Slowly. And more Misfire. At this point, we'll clear the codes, take it for a 2-trip test drive, make sure those codes don't come out. And we're all done.